All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, I remember one day I was watching the NFL Network, and they had their biographical special, A Football Life, on. And it was featuring Mr. Bruce Arians. And it was able to provide me with some background in how extensive his career has been in building up quarterbacks. So when I heard that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had hired him, I said to myself, wow, Jameis Winston could not ask for anything better than to be coached by Bruce Arians, because this is the guy who's been able to captain the ship and bring forth the best out of Andrew Luck, out of Ben Roethlisberger, out of Peyton Manning. So if he cannot help Jameis Winston, nobody can. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Max,
Yes.
what do you think of the Arians hiring?
I think both the Arians hiring.
Arians. We'll get to Kingsbury in just a second.
Arians hiring, I like. I like the Arians.
I love the Arians hiring. I think that if you're Jameis Winston right now, you should have called up Bruce Arians as soon as you heard that he got hired. You should not have even waited for him to call you up, because I promise, as soon as Arians signed the contract, he wanted to call up Jameis. He should have jumped the gun. When I say he, I mean Jameis Winston. He should have jumped the gun and tried to call up Arians, because you want to get the ball rolling very, very quickly. And then from what I understand, they also hired Todd Bowles as the defensive coordinator. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be the team to watch next season. I believe they finished this year at 6-10, somewhere around there. But Jameis Winston played at a relatively high level the last 9 games of the season or so, whenever he was finally allowed to start. 7, 8 games, maybe 9 games. But I think that they saw enough promise to say to themselves, you know what, if we bring in the right quarterback whisperer as head coach, we may be able to bring out the best in Jameis Winston.
Arians hiring, I think they got a good coach. I don't know that he wins with Jameis Winston, because I don't believe in Jameis Winston. But I think they got a coach who has there's this, I talk about the bad impulses in conservatism among some organizations.
Yes, there are also terrible impulses amongst these so-called liberals, i.e. the Luciferians, i.e. the Marxists. So what the conservatives have going for them is that oftentimes they utilize a lot of fear-mongering rhetoric. What the liberals have going for them is that they like to make promises that they're totally disingenuous about, to lead people, especially the most disenfranchised aspects of society, into a pit that they're not warned about.
There are good impulses in conservatism sometimes, like, for example, hey, we've always wanted the line of scrimmage, for example, so we need to have a good offensive line, even though the quarterbacks are getting the ball out quickly and all that stuff, and but when it's just like, we have a feeling that this guy gives us an old school feeling, let's do it. The Giants behave that way right now. I don't like it. Bruce Arians has a proven track record, but I don't think it's like a quote-unquote proven head coach simply because he's been around for a while. I think he's a good head coach. I do not believe ultimately he'll have success in Tampa Bay, but that's because I don't think that they have a quarterback who's...
I think they're going to have success in Tampa Bay, Max Kellerman. I truly do. They have so many weapons. Jameis Winston was a number 1 overall draft pick for a reason. He's certainly shown flashes, especially down the stretch of last season. This is going to be his opportunity to show what he can really do.
Who's built for ultimate success in this league.
First 3 seasons in Arizona, 10-6, 11-5, 13-3. Made the playoffs 2 of those years. Went to the NFC Championship game the year that Carolina went to the Super Bowl. Shellacked them in the NFC Championship game in Carolina. Bruce Arians can coach. I like him a lot. I also like the fact that even though he's about 66 years of age, if I remember correctly, he really knows how to ingratiate himself with players. It seems to have the kind of relationship with the modern day era of players that you need to have. Having said that, while I'm not going to sit up here and knock it down and say it's a bad hire by any stretch, because I think he's qualified and deserves an opportunity to be a head coach in this game, I'm not sure this is a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination for Tampa. Number 1, because Winston is there. Number 2, because you had Carson Palmer in Arizona when you were quarterbacking there. The year that you had Drew Stanton and Ryan Lidley.
Right, but is Carson Palmer that much better a quarterback than Jameis Winston? Carson Palmer's a nice quarterback. I don't think that he's much better than Jameis Winston. I'm not sure that he's any better than Jameis Winston. And that's why you bring in a Bruce Arians, because once again, he's recognized as a quote-unquote quarterback whisperer. They made an investment in Jameis Winston. You don't just throw away number 1 overall draft picks.
Obviously, your offense wasn't that great. Your last year in Arizona, with Carson Palmer still there, you had the 25th ranked offense, okay? 22 in yards allowed. Now,
That means what? That means that Carson Palmer ain't that damn good.
Now, 3 of those 5 years you were there, your defense was top 10. So I'm looking at Tampa right now because I think that's the major problem with them. They want to work
That's why they brought in Todd Bowles.
the worst defense in the league across the board, against the run, against the pass, in yards allowed, in points allowed. Tampa was just awful. Their offense was actually ranked 12th. Could it do better? Yes, but it could do a hell of a lot worse with the weapons that they have. So I think he's going to be a welcomed addition in that regard. I don't know what he's going to do defensively. It remains to be seen.
Once again, sir, they brought in Todd Bowles, who's widely recognized as one of, if not the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. And if I remember correctly, they worked together in Arizona when the Arizona Cardinals had a top-notch defense.
And the biggest thing for me, the biggest hiccup for me, biggest thing that gives me cause to pause, I'm not hiring a coach that goes out front and center and say, the only job I want is Cleveland. And then I'm Tampa, and I got to recruit a friend that's a manager for the Chicago Cubs and Joe Madden to talk you into taking this job. I'm not down with that.
Right, but Stephen A. Smith, you have to understand something, bro. Sometimes you got to put in work to get the person who's best for you. So the main thing is understanding why it is that we want that coach for Jameis Winston. Right now, the hot new thing is to hire these 35-year-old offensive coordinator geniuses. But Sean McVay's, they don't grow on trees. So if they can't find one of those guys, then you get an old head who you know you can hire for 3 years, try to get Jameis Winston on track, and you spend these next 3 years trying to spotlight maybe the next Sean McVay or whoever, or groom a young offensive coordinator on your staff to replace Bruce Arians when he's ready to leave. But Bruce Arians is not slim pickings at all. That's not an issue. And if he's somebody that you know would be best for your franchise, why not put in the due diligence and the work to bring him on? Even if he says, I only want to work for Cleveland. Of course he wants to go to Cleveland because he sees the bountifulness of that team right now. They have a very good defense, and they have one of the top young quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, they finished, maybe like 2 games out from making the playoffs this year. So why wouldn't he say that he wants to go to Cleveland as opposed to going to Tampa Bay to try to initiate a reclamation project on a quarterback, though talented, who's proven that, he leaves a lot to be desired in between the ears.
In other words, I need to know that you want to be here, okay? So again, I'm not going to sit up there and just excoriate it. I'm not going to say it's bad because I know that Arians could coach. I know he knows the NFL. I know he knows football. I know he's relatable for some reason to the modern day player. But again, those things give me cause to pause. What you're going to do on the defensive side of the ball, and also the fact that you said it flat out, you wasn't interested in any job other than Cleveland. That gives me cause to pause.
I think this is a slam dunk hire. Slam dunk hire.
Thank you, sir.
All right, here's why. A couple of reasons. Number one, when you speak about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their coaching staff, they hired Todd Bowles. Okay.
Ding.
Okay,
Yes.
Todd Bowles, to me, might be the most important hire on
I wasn't
that
even
staff.
thinking about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Todd
good
Bowles.
point, good point.
I think it's an excellent defensive coordinator, regardless of what you thought about the job he did with the Jets. Excellent defensive coordinator. But more importantly, you bring in Bruce Arians, and the reason why you bring him in is because of Jameis Winston. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Jameis Winston is an immensely talented guy. The problem with Jameis Winston, he's reckless with the football.
Ding.
Whether it's been fumbles or interceptions, okay? Bruce Arians has coached some of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, whether we talk about Peyton Manning, Big Ben, Carson Palmer. This guy has a pedigree of getting the most out of the quarterback at the quarterback position.
He also has a relationship with Jameis. He came
does,
to his
right.
camps for
That's
years
right.
when
He
he
has
was in
a
Alabama.
prior relationship with Jameis. So I think the fit for Tampa Bay is a really, really good fit for them.
Let me ask you this. If he doesn't succeed with Jameis, is that the end of Jameis as a starting quarterback in the NFL?
Probably.
I doubt it. Because if he does not succeed with Jameis, quote unquote, not succeed with Jameis, all that's going to happen is the Buccaneers are going to try to cut ties with Jameis, and I promise you another team is going to give him a chance.
I think it would that would be a huge hit for Jameis.
I want to ask
Huge.
one thing though, you guys, because I thought Jameis was already done. So I find this more surprising, not the Arians hiring, but trying to still develop and believing in Jameis.
No, you were hoping that Jameis was already done because you're another super liberal feminazi on television. You were hoping that he was already done. You didn't think that he was already done because Anybody who's been paying attention to how well Jameis Winston has played over the last, I would say, 6, 7, maybe even 8 games of the regular season, you know that he was one of the highest rated quarterbacks in the NFL. So you were not keeping proper track of how well he was playing. His team was competitive in every game that they were in. Even when they lost, you have to take into account that they had the worst defense in the NFL. So that's on you, Molly Karen.
The organization is staying with it.
They publicly came out and said
no, I know. That's more baffling to me.
Listen, all Phil stuff aside, we know the organization wants to stay with Jameis Winston, so that's why I think the Bruce Arians hire is good. It's good for this organization.
Here's the only problem that I have with everything that y'all just said, because y'all applaud the fact that Jameis Winston has a relationship with Bruce Arians. My problem is he supposedly had a relationship with Dirk Cutter. How'd that work out? I mean, so
yeah, but you know what?
Right, brother, but I'm not quite sure if I will put Dirk Cutter on the same level as Bruce Arians.
You know what?
At some point, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it can't work and Bruce Arians can't make it work, because we know he can. What I'm saying is that at some point in time, it can't be about the personal relationship you have with the. Maybe you don't need to have a personal relationship with him. Maybe what you need to do is sit back and say, "Look, I'm gonna get your behind up out of here. You don't perform. You know you can play better than this." Maybe that's what you need to be.
Right, but I have news for you, Stephen A. Smith. You better have somebody replace him when you start making threats about who you're going to get up out of there. Because if you're a head coach, you have somebody to report to as well. So you can get on TV and talk with all the bluster and open your eyes wide like an angry black woman all you want. Jameis Winston ain't going anywhere, at least not for now, and at least not until they have an appropriate replacement. Because believe you me, had that backup quarterback, what's that dude's name? The guy with the big beard who was in Buffalo. Had he been able to maintain his level of play, they would have replaced Jameis Winston last year permanently.
Here's a problem. Here's what the problem is that the Tampa Bay Bucks ran into.
Okay.
They had Dirk Cutter as the OC.
Yep.
And Jameis Winston had some success. And then they elevated him to the head coach.
Bruce Arians is a head coach.
He's a head coach, similar to what the Giants did. What's his name?
With the defensive coordinator? No, the Giants didn't do it with the defensive
coordinator. Under Tom Coughlin. I can't.
McAdoo?
McAdoo. Elevated McAdoo to head coach, didn't work out. This is a totally different animal with Bruce Arians, who's had a lot of success as a head coach in this league. Good point.
Okay, brother, so now this is going to be the continuation on the feature pertaining to Bruce Arians being hired as the new coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is going to be the official handler of Mr. Jameis Winston. And like any good handler or caretaker, their primary job is to build up the confidence of their ward. Bruce Arians understands that very well. He knows that pretty much Jameis Winston is a project that has a lot of potential, but he is a broken project. So first you have to rebuild him mentally before you can work on other aspects that can take him to his highest possibility. So let's see what Mr. Arians is promising for Jameis Winston.
In his introductory press conference, new Bucs coach Bruce Arians said he's got no qualms about famous Jameis, and the whole thing is going to be built around Winston. He also said he can win it all. They just need to have the pieces around him. Max?
Yep.
He did have a lot of talent around him, at least on offense. Do you have a problem with this?
You can't have a problem with this because what is Bruce Arians supposed to say? I can't win with him? They brought him in for the sole purposes of seeing what they could salvage from this Jameis Winston experiment. So if Bruce Arians cannot save Jameis Winston, he's pretty much done for.
Yes, but it's not. Let me put it. The coach has to build around the quarterback. Mm-hmm. If he takes the job, he has to believe in the quarterback. So I understand what he's doing. Much like when we were discussing earlier in the show, Cliff Kingsbury.
Look, sometimes a parent or caretaker has to believe in their child or the child that they're in command over or that they're in stewardship over. Even when they know that what they're asking of the child is probably not capable of doing. Oftentimes, they'll try to project an inordinate amount of confidence into the child so that they can succeed. A lot of success is just based on your mentality, your outlook. So Bruce Arians understands that. Jameis Winston right now, the rapport between him and Bruce Arians reminds me of that show, The Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan. Jameis is like that badass Doberman pincher who don't know how to act. And Bruce Arians is Cesar Millan. It's his job to teach Jameis Winston how to act, how to fulfill what he's supposed to be doing.
If he really loves Kyler Murray, then okay, go get Kyler Murray. Whether he's right or wrong about it, what's the point in the hire if he can't get his guy?
Absolutely.
Once you hire the head coach, it's because he takes the job, not just for the money. You would think a guy like Bruce Arians, also because he believes in Jameis Winston, build around the quarterback. It's just that I disagree with him about Jameis Winston.
Because you're emotionally perturbed, because you believe that Jameis Winston has a serial conduct problem. And there's more than enough empirical data to substantiate your belief or your assertion. I understand that. But you also have to understand that the more of an investment that a certain faction has made in a commodity, the more patient they are to hope that it's going to bear fruit.
I don't think Jameis can get it done. So even though I understand Stephen A. doubling down on Jameis if you're Arians, I believe it's a mistake because I wouldn't double down on Jameis.
Well, listen, the man, people call him a turnover machine, things of that nature. Jameis Winston had 4 interceptions in the last 7 games or so. 2 fumbles are lost, if I remember correctly. Just looking at the numbers here. What I would tell you is that I'm not high on Jameis Winston right now. There's something that's missing. I would agree with that, but Bruce Arians is supposed to be that guy that could fix things. What he did in Indianapolis after Pagano went down with his illness, everyone raved about it, even though he had Andrew Luck at his disposal. What he did with Carson Palmer, they got to an NFC Championship game, even though Carson Palmer was better than Jameis Winston. Bruce Arians knows a thing or two about what he's doing. And when you have weapons like they have in Evans and O.J. Howard, and if Deshaun Jackson ends up staying there and what have you, if you're Bruce Arians, you're believing I can influence Jameis Winston. I think it's a last-ditch effort on the part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to influence positively Jameis Winston. We'll see what happens. But again, Ryan Fitzpatrick, assuming he's going to be there next season, I don't know if that's the case, at least you got him to lean on. I'm not that high on Jameis Winston.
You have Ryan Fitzpatrick to lean on. This is why you guys could never be general managers. We already know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is, okay? Ryan Fitzpatrick is that chick that you keep breaking up with because you keep hoping that she's a wife material woman and she's nothing but a damn concubine. And every time you get back together with this broad, you're hoping that she's changed into a wife material woman. She's not going to change. She's still a concubine. Okay? Ryan Fitzpatrick is a concubine. He's not the wife. He might be good in bed. That's about it. Ryan Fitzpatrick will come out. He'll spell the starting quarterback, have a couple of 400-yard games, but do not be fooled. When you throw him out there for that 3rd or 4th game, he's going to throw 6 interceptions.
Ryan Fitzpatrick,
but I'm not giving up on
Ryan Fitzpatrick is why I'm not high on Jameis. I was much higher before I saw what Fitzpatrick.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is a better.
Right, but what did he do? All Fitzpatrick did was what he normally does. Have a couple of 400-yard games, and then when these teams caught up to his ass, he started having 5 interception games. We already know what Fitzpatrick can do. Talk about what Jameis Winston did the last 7 or 8 games of the season, where you guys were not paying attention to the fact that he was one of the most proficient quarterbacks in the NFL.
Better quarterback than Jason Winston.
That's the point. And Fitzpatrick can't stay consistent over the course of the season. That's why he's not really a starter. But what he showed you was what competent quarterbacking looks like with that team's offensive weapons. That was what was jarring to me. Like, oh my God, Jameis! This offense never looked like this with Jameis, and Jameis had these same weapons. What's going on? I think Jameis is one of these good from far but far from good kind of quarterbacks, and obviously his behavior off the field is far from good, and you can tell that from afar too. I'm talking about on the field. He gives people the sense that he's a championship kind of quarterback, the way Roethlisberger did once upon a time. Athletic enough at the size. He's big.
Look, Jameis has one big problem. His one big problem is the same problem both on the field and off the field. That's his decision making. Hopefully he's going to become a better decision maker off the field, and that will reflect on the field. Also his accuracy and his timing. Bruce Arians has to work with him on those things. Because one thing we know that Jameis cares. He cares damn near too much. Motherfucker on the sideline eating W's.
He's big and strong, has that football rah-rah thing that seems to get guys to want to play with him and for him. And I don't see him making the plays down the field. Like, I just don't see it happening when they need to. And I don't see the offense working as well as it did with Fitzpatrick, who is at times a competent quarterback, but is second rate. You know, he hasn't been a career starter. He's been kind of a career backup who sometimes gets starting opportunity.
He's a career backup who you don't mind coming off the bench when your starter gets hurt. But if he plays more than a game and a half, he's going to be whack juice.
Opportunities.
Okay, guess this is just a last-ditch effort with Jameis. I thought
It
they
is a
would have
last-
been done
it
after
is a
the
last-ditch
season,
effort.
for sure, but apparently they'll give it one more shot. And we know the relationship that he has with Bruce
He's the number
Arians.
one.
Molly Kerm, I'm surprised. Normally, you're on your shit when it comes to the NFL. Jameis Winston was exemplary the last 6 or 7 games of the season where he played.
One overall pick, and you got a big arm,
Yeah.
you're going to get plenty of
I
chances.
got to tell you, I mean, this subject didn't even interest me. I'm so blah on Jameis Winston.
Right.
So why the hell you talking about it for? Sound like the damn woman on her menstrual. I'm not even really interested in this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Just shut the hell up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying give up on him, but there was a time coming out of Florida State, you were excited about Jameis.
Who gives a shit about old shit? Let's evaluate what's going on right now. Right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trying to figure out if Jameis Winston is something worth salvaging. They're bringing in this coach. They're going to try to make the best of it. We know that Bruce Arians has a history of being able to bring the best out of very talented quarterbacks. That's where we're at right now.
Jameis
course.
Winston, seeing what he has, and it's just gone.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
Jameis
Oh, the thrill is gone? So you ready to break up with Jameis?
and Mariota, that tandem coming out, you know, they're linked in a way that I think Cam and out in consecutive drafts, but it was still like, which one would you take when they were in college?
Yeah.
And Cam and Luck, the level they've hit, not to mention Eli and Roethlisberger and like those and Rivers, versus the level
Those
of that
haven't
draft.
panned out the same yet.
That's a disappointing draft for quarterbacks.
No question.
Look, let me say this very quickly, because he's talking about Cam and Luck, even though they both came out in separate years. Cam and Luck are viewed as two quarterbacks who bring all the physicality that you would ask for to the quarterback position. But the best quarterback to have come out of the draft in that 2-year stretch has proven to be Russell Wilson. So I don't think about Andrew Luck that much. I think that Andrew Luck is somebody who, he may have a renaissance late in his career. He might even win a Super Bowl very late in his career. But he's a very mistake-prone quarterback. Very mistake-prone. But anyway, we'll see what happens with Mr. Jameis Winston. Hopefully, he'll be able to make the most or the best out of a relatively bad situation. So peace.